video was originally recorded November 2017 at Tibet House US and is a part of the ongoing Force for Good class series. To learn more, please visit tibethouse.us.
More quickly. It just goes like that. Absolutely shoots by. Doesn't it? Particularly if you're absorbed in something. So how is everybody tonight? Did you have a good Thanksgiving? You overate and now you need the medicine Buddha? We're also lucky, actually. I had a question before we start tonight I wanted to ask you. We're just planning the program for the spring, and I plan to teach 2 units of 4 sessions each unit, something like that, 3 or 4. And are there any requests from some of you have been to numbers of different things? Is there a particular thing that you would like me to teach? That doesn't mean you have to come. I'm just saying that you think would be interesting. You don't have to come. It's all right. But what do you think would be interesting at this time in the spring? If anybody has any ideas, since some of you have studied a lot, and some subject that needs to be touched on or something, or some text or something like that. Does anyone have any idea? I thought I would ask the general group. You could also think about it and tell me later in the evening. If you want, no, you have something, Owen, right away? What did you think of?
You know what I'm going to say.
What?
You know what I'm going to say. Shambhala.
Oh, Shambhala, like Kala Chakra, or particularly the legend about Shambhala?
Both, really, because the idea of Shambhala, ultimately being the mind.
Right now, we're having a Shambhala practice thing up at Mandala, but this one is more introductory in a way and more general. So the Shambhala could be a topic of one lecture, but what it is and the meaning of it and all that, But
You haven't done Vimalakirti.
I'm sorry?
You haven't done Vimalakirti in a while here.
Haven't done the Vimalakirti, that's true. Yes, I do love. Yes, the Dzongzar Khyentse Rinpoche, who is the one who, when he called a conference a few years ago, and we founded, and he insisted I go. And hello, Duke, how are you? And he insisted that I go, and in India, and founded the 84,000 project, which is to translate the Kanjur. My project that I have with the American Institute of Buddhist Studies is to translate the Tenjur, which is 4,000 works. The Dalai Lama, when my Mongolian teacher asked me to translate in my life, and when I complained that I would never have a chance to do that, that was 45 years ago. And I have been involved in getting done about 30, 35 of the books so far out of 4,000. And I said, I can't possibly do that. They said, of course you can, but you can set up an institution and a process that then in a few generations will maybe translate it, they said. So that's what I did. So then this Khyentse, he created 84,000 to do the Kanjur, which is another collection of about 1,500 or some 1,300 books, something like that. And which are the scriptures, the Tenjur are the scientific shastras, the treatises like Bodhicharya, Avatara, Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life, that kind of book, written by Indian enlightened authors, And I gave them my translation of the Vimalakirti because I discovered that I had the copyright. And never mind, so that's another story. And it was published by a university press, but then whatever. And then I own the copyright. So I gave them that to have on their reading room. And when I found out I had the rights, I said, I had to get the rights, then I would give it to them. And then he liked it, and then he wrote an introduction to it of his own, sort of his own funny way. So that's available on the 84,000 website. It's my translation. We touched it up a little bit, me and one of their editors. I made a few changes that I'd like to make now. There are a few more actually that I didn't make that I will do in the future. So that's a good idea. Vimalakirti is so easy and good to do as a Mahayana Sutra. How many of you here have read the Vimalakirti Sutra? Oh, about 9 or 10. It's a sort of a very marvelous, far-ranging Mahayana sutra. So maybe I'll do a set of 4 on the Vimalakirti. Thank you. That's a good suggestion. If anybody else has any other suggestions through the evening, let me know. I think I'll try to do that with the Vimalakirti. And now we're doing Medicine Buddha. Okay, so let's get it on with the Medicine Buddha. Okay. So I hope I didn't close that. Yes, there's the Medicine Buddha. I just want to put that up there. It's a very sweet one. I don't know who painted this. I don't know where I got it even. But it's a rather sweet one. Now, if you look at Medicine Buddha, he is, this particular one is a little more light blue than he usually is. And he's usually a more dark blue. And it's a beryl, is the word. And a sapphire is a beryl. And it's a translucent but very dark blue. The sapphire is, right? And but a lot of people constantly translate it as lapis lazuli, but lapis lazuli is not transparent. It's opaque, so it can't be lapis lazuli. It's Vaidurya. It's the word Vaidurya. Does that have a meaning in Hindi, Sab? Vaidurya?
For blue?
What?
For blue? Hindi for blue?
But it just means blue.
No, you're asking Hindi for
Yeah, what jewel is it associated with in India today?
Neela.
Neela?
Yeah.
Neela is the word for blue.
Correct.
But Vaidurya, so it's not a common Hindi word then.
How do you spell it?
Vaidurya, Vaidurya, Vaidurya.
No, it's not.
Okay, because he's called Vaidurya Prabharaja. One of the names of Medicine Buddha is the king of Vaidurya light, which is beryl, actually. It usually translates in dictionaries as beryl. And the beryl crystal is a sapphire, emerald, ruby. These are beryls. Diamond is not a beryl. It's a little different one. But, so anyway, never mind that. But he's light blue. Now, he has in his bowl, on his left hand, he has the 3, which are in this painting, have different colors. There's leaves coming, and then there's these 3 nuts, fruits or nuts, you could say, and which are called myrobalan. And there are different varieties. It's aru, baru, and kuru in Tibetan. And Aurora in Sanskrit is the most important one. And these are kind of panacea medicinal plants. And then the other thing is that in his right hand, which is in the boon-granting gesture, giving a gift-giving gesture, he holds the stalk of another plant, which you can see this comes up here behind him. And there should be more Aurora plants there. I guess the red ones up there are supposed to be Aurora fruits up higher up on that. And there's a nice book by David Crow called In Search of the Medicine Buddha. It's a kind of flowery, but it's his own history of seeking. It tells a little bit about Tibetan medicine. It's quite nice. And it talks about how the medicine Buddha is holding the plant because the plant is our friend, the friend of the human being. And it comes from the Medicine Buddha Sutra, which is a sort of ancient thing, that there were 7 brothers in another universe, billions of aeons ago. They became Buddhas, all 7 of them at once. I don't know how they managed that, but they did. And they particularly were expert about healing and medicine and understanding the nature of mind and body and so on. And they were known as the 7 medicine Buddhas. And then, according to the sutra, the legend, they looked forward and backward in time, because Buddhas are present in all moments of time. When you become a Buddha, you're not only everywhere in space, but you're also everywhere, every when in time. So you're not isolated in a moment, like when you're not in the future, not in the past, like a normal, ignorant person. You are everywhere in time, which of course is inconceivable, but you are. So they looked way forward in time and they said, oh, on that planet, which we call Saha, and the Buddhists call our planet Saha. Saha means tolerable, in the sense of barely tolerable, sort of just tolerable. So it's not a paradise, it's in a way, like as we fantasize about heavenly paradises. So they said, in that universe, there will be 1,000 Buddhas that will go there. But the fourth of those 1,000 Buddhas is the particularly most brave one, because he takes rebirth and he gives his teaching, he takes his final Buddha birth, rather. Buddhas are always taking rebirth everywhere, but he takes his final Buddha birth in a time on that planet when beings are relatively short-lived, human beings. They only live 100 years, more or less, except in unusual circumstances. And there's a lot of warfare and violence. And also they get sick a lot. So we should go and inspire him, and we should propagate the medicine Buddha teachings when he gives his teaching, because people will need to heal themselves, so they'll be able to study and use his teachings, which is what he wants them to do, and to find out their own true nature, you know. And so they then went, and then he they sort of inducted him, Shakyamuni, and he became the 8th medicine Buddha. And at a moment in his teaching career in Vaishali, which is the same city where Vimalakirti lived, actually. It was like New York or something, or Chicago, big city, San Francisco, and on a famous river, a very wealthy city. And in that city, a certain assembly came, thousands of people, and gods also, and rishis, you know. I think I have a picture here somewhere with this, yeah, this one. And many rishis came, and many bodhisattvas from other universes and things, besides the 8 medicine Buddhas, who are up on top there, you see. I think there's 8 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, there's a 9th one, I don't know who that is. But there's supposed to be 8 of them, basically. And he manifested this Pure Land of the medicine, which is what is depicted here in this painting. This is a copy of a painting originally from the 17th century, late 17th century, time of the 5th Dalai Lama, between the 5th and 6th Dalai Lamas, by the regent who was the spiritual son of the 5th Dalai Lama. He commissioned these paintings. And so all of this, so inside the mandala with him, there are what are called the 4 audiences. And these 4 audiences are the Indian gods, you know, Brahma, Vishnu, Ganesha, Shiva, they're all there, and some goddesses. And then there are the celestial bodhisattvas, like Manjushri and Avalokiteshvara and people like that. And then over here are the rishis, you know, with the long hair, the Indian. I'm sorry, I can't sort of expand it. I can expand it a little. Over here, yeah, you can see that detailed. And over here, there are these rishis who are the Indian seers, you know, over here. And then up here are the Buddhist monks. So those are his 4 main disciples. Although whenever a Buddha teaches, all of these all kinds of strange creatures show up in the sky who are invisible to the normal people. And somehow, it's sort of like Occupy Wall Street. He doesn't have any sound equipment or megaphones or anything, but everyone in a huge, vast audience perceives him as if he was right in front of them. And then as if he's speaking personally to them. It's a special gift that a Buddha has, that everyone sees them as very close, even if they're way in the back row, sees the Buddha as being very close. And also, if they speak a different language, they hear him giving the teaching in another language. He doesn't need translators. It's like Star Trek or something. It's like universal translation energy is around. So that these are called the Avenika Dharma, 2 of the 18 Avenika Dharmas of the Buddha, meaning the uncommon properties of a Buddha. That everyone hears him in their own language and they all see him as right immediately in front of them. And so then he turns blue in that color. And the blue color may symbolize, it's called, it generally in tantric symbology, let's say, it symbolizes what's called the ultimate reality, perfection, wisdom. The wisdom of the perfection of ultimate reality. And which is the transmutation of the addictive emotion of hatred. Because hatred, it's a wisdom, ultimate reality, perfection, wisdom. And it's because anger or hatred is connected with intelligence, because it wants to take things apart. Intelligence wants to analyze and understand things in terms of their parts, so it sort of disassembles things. Hello, Jana. How are you? You don't have to bend over like that. It's okay. And so that symbolizes that this is all-knowing awareness, and also the radiance, this Vaidurya Prabha Raja, he's called the king of the beryl or the sapphire light, which means that this blue light that radiates from him is infinitely healing. It turns, hatred in a way is almost one of the worst of the addictive poisons that are the root of this life of suffering. Ignorance, of course, is the root of the roots, but hatred is the most destructive one, very difficult. So it's like he has taken the energy of hatred, which wants to disassemble and destroy things, and turned it into destroying ignorance and being aware of the perfection of ultimate reality. And it's a rather darker blue, even. It can be mistaken as black, actually. And then, around him, in the field of this thing, are all these plants, and there's some mineral springs up here. There are mineral springs, and there are some animals also. See, there people are bathing in hot springs of different types, cold springs and hot springs, which they have a lot of in Tibet and in the Himalayan area of India. And then this is in the western direction. In the northern direction, there's all kind of cooling plants that grow, herbal plants, and fruits and different things, which grow with the power of moonlight in the northern direction. It's a cool direction. And each of these has a specific name, and there's only a small amount of the huge Tibetan pharmacopoeia. And in the eastern side, there are these different kinds of myrobalan or Aurora and Barura and Kurura trees, which are these trees that grow especially in India. Although I think I have a friend, I want to get them to grow them in Hawaii. Or they could be grown in Florida, I'm sure, actually, or in any sort of little more tropical place. And those are the celestial Aurora trees that grow in certain lower level paradises. They heal any sickness, is the idea. And that's what the plant that he's holding is that one. And there you can see the monks and the rishis, and those are the celestial bodhisattvas, and then these are the Hindu deities up here. And Brahma, the deity Brahma, the four-faced one, he is actually a bodhisattva, as it turns out. He's a great bodhisattva himself. Because he's been there for 3 or 4 Buddhas, and so he finally had to study a little. Okay? So, can you have a picture of that? And then the property, what happened, all the people from Vaishali who came and all the people, when they were within the field, and this of course is a Mandala palace here in the center, and then there's like a city of medicine. You see these are like hospitals, doctors' residences. It's like around that, it's like all these little houses, like a little city, which is also unusual. That there's a place for all the doctors and the patients to come to and the doctors to live. You see it all around? There are. And another unusual thing is he's facing south. And down in the south, the hot medicines that help alleviate conditions of cold in the system, spicy, hot things, they grow with the solar power down in the south. with the sun power in the south. And he faces the south, which is usually in mandalas, the deity, the central Buddha figure, whoever it may be, faces east. And so the east is usually the bottom of a mandala when it's two-dimensional like that. But in this case, it's the south. And this is just this is his teaching moment, and this is his Pure Land, which is called Sudarshana, which means beautiful to behold. And the thing about the Sudarshana is that when you're present in the presence of Medicine Buddha, your vision changes of life around you. And that you suddenly, everything looks like medicine to you. And it always makes me think of a figure that some of you older people will remember with me, Ewell Gibbons. You remember Ewell Gibbons? And I always remember when he visited Johnny Carson one night. And when he came out on the stage, and he said, now we have a guest, Ewell Gibbons. And then when he came out on the stage, Johnny Carson came out from behind his desk, and he put his arms like this, like he was protecting the couch where Ewell Gibbons was going to sit. And so people were saying that Ed McMahon or something said, like, well, why are you doing that, Johnny? He said, well, I don't know, Ewell might eat it. I don't want him to eat the couch. Meaning that Ewell Gibbons was this guy, this nature guy, an herbal and medicine and plants and things. And he was into how every plant has medicine. And all of nature is growing there symbiotically with us, right? Not just the exchange of oxygen and carbon, but also every kind of thing. There's a cure to everything is in all the plants. Because this is the environment in which is created around us by the blessings of many, many benevolent spirits, and by our own really good karma. In the Buddhist view, we all have really good karma to have become human beings from all kinds of other life forms. Being human is an incredible privilege and an incredible gift. And with that life that we have as a human, we can achieve an incredible understanding, which helps us forever, is the idea, So the plants are there to help us, you see. They're Medicine Buddha's healing army as the plants. And so when you're in the Medicine Buddha mandala, you see everything as, even poison, even arsenic, even the deadliest thing, the snake venom. In maybe a tiny amount is a homeopathic healing thing, or it's like so everything, if you have the knowledge of its nature and how it relates, it's all healing, is the idea. And I'm just mentioning that particularly because Tibet House has a place in the north, or in the Catskills, southern Catskills, but north of here, which is called Menla, which is the Tibetan word for the Medicine Buddha. And that's our ambition. When anybody steps on the property there, they'll immediately feel that everything is positive around them, every plant, even the weeds, even the mosquitoes. But maybe the ticks, they have a hard time with the ticks, of course. But the deers who bring the ticks, they all run around there very free. We have this little special hidden valley that there are no neighbors. In the middle of a national forest. So that's our ambition, to reproduce that. Now, in the history of Buddhism and of India, of course, the Brahmins who forgot about the Buddhist contribution to India, they think that it came from Brahma and Ayurveda and from Tantra, some of these rishis, and of course, great knowledge did come from them. However, there's a scholar named Kenneth Zisk, who is American, but he teaches in Denmark. And he's elderly now, and he wrote a wonderful book. I forgot the title. It was a forgettable title, but it was about the history of Indian medicine. And he fills in the gap that is logically there, which is that the Brahmins are, even the name for the medical tradition by them is called Ayurveda. But Ayurveda, knowledge of long life, because Ayu means long life, is one of 8 branches of Buddhist medicine, the longevity branch, like gerontology, or whatever we call it, gerontology, dealing with elderly people like me, and to give them long life, and that's what they're interested in. But it's only one branch. In Buddhist medicine, Indian and Tibetan Buddhist medicine, gynecology, pediatrics, surgery, pharmacology, etc. There are all these other branches. And ayur is long life is one of them. Also, virility. They had their own Viagra's, definitely, to see to it about progeny and things like that, fertility. So they had like 8 branches basically, and Ayurveda emphasizing the long life one, because the Brahmins, like, they have this thing, they're not going to be dealing with lower caste people. They don't have the same pulse diagnosis as Tibetan and Chinese medicine do, because they don't want to touch people. So it's unlikely that, it is likely, and this gives a lot of evidence, but it's hard to find evidence because the Buddhist phase of Indian history, which was from Buddha's time about 1,000 years really strong, and then the last 500 years even more strong, and almost in a way, but very intermingled in the last 500 years. And that's totally got lost then once the Muslims destroyed all of the Buddhist institutions, and then the Brahmins reasserted their thing about the caste system. Buddhism was very corrosive or erosive, not violently, but very revolutionary about not considering the caste system so rigid, or what we call, what you call in social science terms, ascriptive caste membership. In other words, you have to be in the same caste. In other words, in the Buddhist thing, it was more flexible. There's more mobility. And there's a lot of records from certain literature from the Buddhist tradition that the background society that is depicted in the literature, not the main story, but the background society, shows that actually the caste system was much less rigid during the golden period of Indian history. And you had untouchable or chandalas who became kings. You had Brahmins who were fishermen, ferrymen. It was like it would move back and forth. It was not such a fixed thing. And in the Pali text of Buddhas, the Buddha very often gets into real tangles with some serious young Brahmins who are very uppity kind of, and they're like, well, we don't know, we're not going to really sit down and listen to you because you're just whatever, you have no caste, you have shaved head, you're like, you have barefoot, and you're originally a Kshatriya, but we don't know what you are now, like, they actually talk to him like that, and then he gets after them. And then he's clairvoyant, and he knows their past lineage. So he says, well, 7 grandmothers ago, you had an untouchable lady who married so-and-so. And it freaks them out. And they have quite sparky dialogues. And then they kind of calm down, and then he teaches them, and then they become inspired. But sometimes they have a little critical clash. They definitely do. And he's very sharp about the caste thing. Can be. For example, there's one guy who was really being snotty with him. He says, well, you come from and it relates to a color thing too, like our racist thing here. The lower castes were darker because they probably came from the older civilization before the people wandered in from Central Asia, the Aryan so-called. And so there's a color thing. So he says to this one Brahmin who's particularly snotty because he has a good knowledge of the Vedas. And he says, well, actually, your great-grandmother was this and that, and they proved it with the name and this and that. Finally, he admitted that he knew that, or he'd heard that. And then the other Brahmins, for whom he was a kind of ringleader, started really saying, oh, we don't want to talk to you. Oh, get lost. And then he starts scolding them for being like that. So it's quite interesting. People really should read, get the Digha Nikaya, the long discourses, or one of these kind of books. And just read through just to get the feeling of the flavor of the Buddhist time, because it's really quite amazing what the sort of the nature of things, the ancient Indian society. So anyway, so the Buddhist medicine in India was probably seminal, like most of in logic, in physics, in psychology, in yoga. It was always very seminal because they developed the universities. They didn't try democracy. They had kings, but they supported the king, listening to ministers, having councils, and as I said, they created a space in the society where caste no longer ruled, where a low caste person who was senior as a monk or a nun to a high caste person was superior in that community to that formerly high caste person. So that high caste person had to defer and be respectful because of being elder as a monk, even physically maybe not elder. So the Buddha did things like that to erode the rigidity of the caste system. And therefore, when the Muslims destroyed the Buddhist institution, Then the Brahmins came out of the families, and then they kind of reasserted, and they became more rigid again, as they are today, indeed, even in spite of Gandhi's constitution and everything. But they're working on it, because there is the idea of, overcoming caste in the Indian constitution. Oh no, no, I didn't want to do that. Oh no, don't do that now. It's very good for removing duplicates. Okay, so there we are, Medicine Buddha. Now let's meditate together a little bit, I think, in honor of Medicine Buddha. Okay? Now, if you're a doctor or a healer, you take one of the courses that you take in medical school is the Medicine Buddha course. And that involves learning to meditate. And you get an initiation into the Medicine Buddha mandala. And there are various kinds of Medicine Buddha mandalas. And you do what we will now sort of rehearse, let's say, which is that first you imagine, first you sort of calm yourself and sit quietly. Take a few breaths, gently, and then you turn your awareness toward yourself, as if you were looking into your own face. And Mark Epstein loves that. The mindful, the Satipatthana Sutta, the mindfulness, the Focus of Mindfulness Sutra. He loves it how it says you set up your mindfulness in front of you. And I think that's he particularly likes the way they say that. And I think that refers to this thing, which is a Tibetan thing, showing the vastness of the Buddhist knowledge on the level of the practical knowledge, where you imagine that you're looking into your own face. And you're doing so, and you have X-ray vision, of course, because you're this disembodying, imagining looker, seer, and you look into your brain, you look into your whole physiology and what your heart pumping, your circulation going, your neural impulses shooting electrically around, breath going in, oxygen going into the alveoli in the lungs and into the bloodstream, and carbon being deposited in the lungs and being exhaled and so on. So you look into all of this amazing process of yourself. And your tummy digesting the nice dinner that you had earlier, at least snack. And you looked entirely at everything. And because you're looking to see who you really are. And actually when you do that, even for a split second, you will feel a little confused. Because of course you think of yourself, your image of yourself relates to when you see your face in the mirror. But when you're looking at your face in this way, you realize that your face is a kind of mask, and your whole process is some really much more complicated thing. And then you're looking in there for something that feels like home, like you. If it's your optical field, you're looking at the sort of the ultimate register, like the digital registry of your visual field, or the film on which the image coming through the optic nerves is reflected. But you don't find anything. So you become a little dizzy and kind of a little swirling, a little confused in your mind, like what am I, sort of thing. And you let go of maintaining any particular kind of sense of secure identity, if you can. So you just sort of let go, and you just be there. And you even begin, you're not even sure where, actually. And you can do this first part. This is just the initial part. You can do it lots of ways. You can think of yourself as a collocation of atoms, within the molecules and the cells. And then you realize atoms are mostly like little tiny zipping things zipping around in mostly empty space. That's a far cry from your habitual sense of self-identity, physical self-identity. So you do that. And then, when you've let go, kind of, and you're sort of open as far as your identity goes, you arise and be all that you can be. As they say in that commercial. You be what you might feel is your ideal persona for meditating. Balanced, alert, feeling awake but not excited, calm but alert. And then you imagine around you a completely different environment. You imagine you're in the Pure Land of the Medicine Buddha. You're in his mandala of the healing plants all around, in the company of the gods and the bodhisattvas, celestial heavenly bodhisattvas and the monks and the rishis, inside the mandala palace. And then in front of you, there, a little bit above, and whatever size you like to think of it, is the Medicine Buddha himself. Shakyamuni himself turned into one of the eighth Medicine Buddha, radiating this blue light. And the dark blue light sort of imperceptibly floods into you and makes you feel really as if the perfection of reality, actual real reality, ultimate reality, is you and is everything around you. And you feel completely peaceful. You may, if you've studied a little Buddhism, you may realize that you're never apart, you have never been apart from nirvana, actually, the uncreated, the primordial. So you're just full of a plenitude of energy that's, however, very calm and still in its plenitude. It's not like bubbling to shoot off somewhere because it's so full and it expands outward everywhere, so there's no big need around you. And you bathe in this flowing blue light, and the rays of the blue light coming from Medicine Buddha, you try to see the Medicine Buddha's face. He has a little tuft of white hair from which light rays radiate on the middle of his forehead. His general complexion is this dark, dark blue that is a radiant dark blue, though. It's cobalt kind of like blue energy. It flows to you, fills you up, and you feel just wonderful in the presence of Medicine Buddha. And then you repeat his mantra by following after me at first, without making too loud, in a murmuring way. Om. Say Om. Om. Vaishajya. Vaishajya. Maha-Vaishajya. Vaishajya Raja. Samudgate. Swaha. Om Vaishajya Vaishajya. Maha Vaishajya. Vaishajya Raja. Samudgate Swaha. Om Vaishajya Vaishajya. Maha Vaishajya. Vaishajya Raja. Samudgate Swaha. Om Vaishajya Vaishajya. Maha Vaishajya. Vaishajya Raja. Samudgate Swaha. Om Vaishajya Vaishajya Maha Vaishajya. Vaishajya Raja Samudgate Swaha. Om Vaishajya Vaishajya Maha Vaishajya Vaishajya Raja Samudgate Swaha Om Vaishajya Vaishajya Maha Vaishajya Vaishajya Raja Samudgate Swaha. Okay, good. So you offer those mantras to the Vaishajya Guru sitting in the space in front of you, radiating and smiling at you actually, and radiating blue light rays toward you. And if you are particularly hungering for a different color, like an orange or a green or a red or a yellow or a white, you can imagine that the blue rays coming from the Vaishajya Guru split like prismatically, rainbow-like, and they flood into you with multiple colors if you prefer. And you just sit and bathe in that, and you feel that this blue, dark blue / rainbow energy is healing every cell in your body, filling you with calm and soothing, blissful, peaceful energy. And you just bathe in that and you enjoy it. And then you can add a few elements. You can add around you, or maybe outside the mandala, but visible to you through walls or whatever, it's all luminous, are all the beings in the world, but in human form. All the animals are also there, but at the moment they're in human form, they say. And in the front rows are beings that you recognize. Your loved ones in the front rows toward the left, the neutral ones straight ahead in the front rows, and the unloved ones who irritate you no end and bother you in the front rows on the right. And yet, as this blue rainbow light fills you up with this immensely positive, buoyant feeling, it reflects from you to all of those beings equally. And you feel that it just automatically, you become a reflector of the Medicine Buddha's healing light to all of them. Although you can embroider however you want the visualization and have rays coming straight from the Medicine Buddha to all of them as well. But particularly here you're sort of putting yourself in a focused position of transmitting or sharing the Medicine Buddha's light blessing with all the beings, unloved as well as loved, unknown as well as known, so that your enjoyment of this blissful energy is shared universally, which just increases your enjoyment of it actually. You don't feel you're depriving yourself by reflecting, as you're already filled with this inconceivable, blissful, deep sapphire energy. And then, just to complete this sequence, if you are a doctor or healer, and if you're in this training specifically, and if you are initiated, then you imagine that the Medicine Buddha is so pleased with you that you are focused in this way. The Medicine Buddha you're seeing up there in front of you, that he becomes more and more miniature and floats down to you, and then merges through the crown of your head, your brain chakra, and he goes down your central channel, his presence and energy, and he occupies the center of your heart chakra, which is in the center of your body at the height of the heart back toward the spine, where the central channel goes in front of a little bit in front of the spine. And you imagine that Medicine Buddha is therefore actually in your heart, the real Medicine Buddha. And then you can go further and imagine that you become the Medicine Buddha. And you are sitting, and you turn blue, and you radiate out to all the beings as indivisible from Medicine Buddha yourself. It's not like you just have to sit back and wait for Medicine Buddha to do it. Medicine Buddha fuses with you and you become Medicine Buddha. And of course it takes a little doing to sort of develop a state of mind where you can feel confident that you are actually the Medicine Buddha. At first a channel, and then the actual Medicine Buddha as perceived by others in your vast field of acquaintance and karmic interconnection. And that therefore the Medicine Buddha blessings flow straight from your heart to all of them. And the Medicine Buddha intelligence enables you to encompass their condition and be aware of what's good about them, what's ailing about them, what they need, what they don't need. And after you develop a certain skill and stability with this visualization practice, you then, in your healing work as a doctor or a nurse or a massage therapist or an acupuncturist or whatever it is that you might do, or even just with your own family wishing well and finding some aspirin or a Band-Aid for people, whatever, you, without mentioning it or not putting up any big pretense about it to anybody, but you avoid burnout, so to speak, by feeling your oneness with the Medicine Buddha, and that becomes really a very important part of your medical training. Okay, ding, all those Medicine Buddhas wake up. It's a really beautiful thing, Imagine if the Western doctors from the Greek tradition, if they were taught a meditation of themselves as blessed by and then fusing with Hippocrates, the great do no harm, the great Greek doctor, so that they sort of were channeling this kind of marvelous tradition. After all their they never get a training like that, but they just go and take the Hippocratic Oath as a formality at the end of their medical study. But if the motivation and the mind were attended to as they should be, then this would be part of the training. And it connects to much more training in compassion and wisdom and empathy and all kind of other things. But this is the particular Medicine Buddha thing, is particularly what the doctors learn. And if you become very skilled at it, and if you have have developed a little one-pointedness in your yoga of life, where you have a good sense of concentration, you can actually have a kind of vision like that, of either the Buddha in front, what they call the front creation, or the self-creation, which for the self-creation you really have to have initiation, supposedly, to try to do it yourself. But Medicine Buddha is pretty harmless. Pretty nice. Then they have another wonderful one that Fifth Dalai Lama taught, where you also are sitting and then you imagine the 7 other Medicine Buddhas, 8 first Medicine Buddhas on top of your head in a stack, going up and up and up. And then you visualize them melting one into another and finally all of them melting into you and something like that. So that's a different, but it's all kind of varieties like that. Okay, any question? You meditated. You might have had some thoughts while meditating. Anybody have a question? Yes? You have to speak really loudly because my hearing aids are not working well.
So you mentioned about the people you love or people neutral in front of you or
I'm sorry, I can't follow. I have to come over nearby you. Yes?
So you talk about the folks in front of you, the folks on your right side and your left side. Is there something that's specific for
You visualize the medicine Buddha on your right side and left side?
I think
You don't have to.
No, I think you mentioned about the people are neutral is on your right side.
Oh, yes, that's in the crowd around you. Yes. The unpleasant ones are on the right side. And the nicer ones are on the left side. But all of the infinite numbers of beings are there. And that's to develop equanimity, where you don't have like favoritism, exactly.
Correct. So is it specific for medicine Buddha or?
What?
Is it specific for medicine?
No, that's all general. That's all general. Not specific for medicine Buddha. That's essential for becoming bodhisattva, to make a universal compassion and not just favor one side or another.
So
right?
The reason I'm asking is when you talk about the refuge field, take refuge, the refuge field, you have your enemies in front of you.
Well, you can. That's not
So
essential.
it's not.
There's no rigid rule. I mean, unless you have discovered one and you're legislating it.
It's equanimity.
What?
Yeah, I understand.
No, the enemy is the hardest one, of course, because if you really imagine the enemy there, then you feel very upset and frightened, and you don't want to do that. And you especially don't want to find the nice quality about the enemy, you know? Nowadays, all you have to do is think about the president, or Mitch McConnell, or anybody who's about to take everything away from everybody, you know? Imagine charging graduate students the tuition waiver as if it was income that they earned and taxing them on $60,000 to $80,000 a year in these fancier colleges, who already just live on a little stipend and have a loan with a high interest, and they're like completely crushed. Imagine that. That's in that bill. To charge them for tuition waivers. What is that? What sort of cruelty is it? I mean, why? So it's easy to imagine the enemy nowadays. Man. CNN, Fox News, it's really easy. But it's very hard to do and actually find a point of lovingness and a point of compassion. But this is not specific to medicine Buddha, this is a general thing. You know, once I was interviewed by a lady in the Times magazine. There was a lady, they still always have an interview where they interview somebody. They take a picture of you standing up, and then it's in the back part of the Sunday magazine. She interviewed me, and she had heard from some podcast or something that, although I was this was during the Bush administration, the second Bush administration, and she heard that I visualized Darth Cheney, as my mother, and she had me elaborate that and how he was female in that lifetime, and he had breasts, you know, and he had a little bonnet with his little Cheney, like Darth face, you know, like, looking down at me adoringly, and I was like slurping there and being nursed by him, and meanwhile filling the world with evil that he was doing and making money for Halliburton and war and so on. She was so fascinated by that, and I myself am fascinated. Very difficult, but that's necessary to do, and that comes from that general compassion thing, you know. And being a doctor in the Indian and Tibetan medical culture, it's said to be not for the purpose of profit or fame or status. If your motive to become a doctor is for profit, fame, or status, you should not do so. You will not be a good doctor, and you will harm people and yourself and develop bad karma. The only acceptable motive to be a doctor is compassion and wish to care for beings, help them, take care of them, alleviate their suffering, and so on. And then it says if you have that motivation, you'll be a really good doctor, and then you will actually get status and fame and wealth. But people will be grateful. But that must not be your motivation if you want to be a good doctor. So there's a little big training in that, you know. And that's considered essential for the doctor, is motivation training. Because motivation is everything in life. And so it's crazy to have a medical system where it's just for money and fame and like expertise and macho like surgery, whatever. Like Dr. Strange before he became Dr. Strange. Remember, he was like doing surgery and all proud of himself, brain surgery. All arrogant, I'm sure you didn't see Dr. Strange because you seemed like a spiritual person, but you should. It would be a big lesson. It's a wonderful film. Benedict Cumberbatch. How did he ever get such a name? Okay, back to serious name. Seriously now. Yes, you have a question, but you have way back there. I'll have a terrible time hearing.
So, is there a version?
Yes, what?
Is there a version of the medicine Buddha for specific health concerns?
For specific what?
Health concerns.
Health issues?
Yes.
Oh, totally. But well, no. In other words, medicine Buddha can heal all health issues and provide longevity and etc. But there isn't like a particular version for a particular one. I'm going to come now to a little bit the medicine teaching. There are sort of 404 categories of diseases in the Buddhist medicine, this is all elaborated. But the medicine Buddha, the way he teaches is different beings emerge from his own chakras, from his own mind, and they ask him questions, and then he answers them. That's how he gives the teaching. And there are different parts of his person become separate beings in the medical sutra. It's very marvelous, actually. But anyway, then they have a setting of 404 main different issues, as you're calling it, health issues. And of those 404, 101 are what they call sort of incidental or casual, and they can just be healed by a little change of lifestyle or diet or something. They're not really, they don't need medical treatment, they just need advice. And then 101 are caused by negative spirits, some kind of curse or demon or bad spirit, goblin. They have a huge list of different kinds, and they tend to congregate in hospitals, actually, by the way, and where people are kind of weakened, because there's something wrong, something else, and they like infect you, and then they make it hard for regular therapies to help you, but normally would, So there's 101 like that. So there are 101 where you referrals to an exorcist or a psychic lama or something like that, or in India, a psychic siddha, adept, guru. And then there's 101 that are called karmic. And that's like our one where they say it's genetic, You're done for, there's nothing we can do, it's your genes. But they don't ever blame genes, but they say it's your karma, and then they refer you to a spiritual teacher to help you, use whatever lifetime you have left or in whatever condition to develop good karma by meditating this and that, learning this and that. And then finally there's 101 to be treated by medicine. And then of medicines, there are 18 different things to do with them. And then there, after diagnosis and so forth, and I'll talk about that. But the 18 different things begin with like, teas, infusions, teas, infusions, and then some kind of powders, and then you get to pills, and then all kind of things like massage, hot compresses, mineral bathes, herbal baths, and things like that. They have steam baths, all kinds of things like that. They have a lot of that sort of external therapy, what they call, which involve also cupping. They have cupping. They have kind of acupuncture. They have bloodletting, actually, either leeches or wet cupping, what they call, something like that. And then it goes on, and then at the very final end is, and of course, diet and lifestyle are always done. And also, lifestyle includes ethical issues about the way you're living, because that will affect your health. If your conscience feels bad because you're doing certain things, that will harm your health. And then finally, surgery is the 18th possible thing that can be done, rather than an early thing. And they had very elaborate surgery, but they had fallen into disuse in Tibet. But in Buddha's time, there was a famous doctor called Jivaka, who was the king, the doctor of a king who was his royal doctor of one of Buddha's great supporters, King Bimbisara, and also he treated Buddha for minor things, and and others. And he did brain surgery and so forth, even in those days. They did, sometimes, if necessary. And so, you know, so in other words, they deal with all different kind of conditions, but it isn't like you have a particular form of medicine Buddha to do that. Medicine Buddha can do all of those things, if you will. Okay? All right? So, let's see. I don't want to just read something, but I want to go, maybe I'll go to the, yeah, so then we looked at the Medicine Buddha Mandala. Then I think also in this one I have this one. I did study Tibetan medicine myself, and I had to pass an exam. I got as far as passing this exam, and I did pass it. And then I did some clinical work under the Dalai Lama's physician of the time, and the one who refounded what's called the Menzikang, or the Tibetan Astro-Medical Institute in Dharamsala, which had been the one in Lhasa. And the exam, there are 3 roots like this, 3 trees like this, which have, some of them have 2 trunks, some of them have 3. This is the first one, but this is a good one to talk about and show you. And you have to memorize, there's I think 260 some leaves. You see the leaves? And then there's so and so many trunks, and then branches and leaves. And the 3 roots, you know, 3 main roots there are. And you have to know every leaf and what it all is and what it all means. You have to memorize that and be able to draw it out by memorizing what's called the Root Tantra. And here the word Tantra means something like technology. So it's the medical textbook. It's called the 4 Tantras that were codified. They're based on the Indian one called the Ashtanga Hridaya, Amrita Garbha or something. Amrita Garbha. And that's an Indian text. But then it's more elaborated because the Tibetans gathered knowledge from China. The Tibetan emperor in the 9th century held a 30-year conference, medical conference, where he gathered Greek physicians from the Persian ones from the Persian court, Mongolian ones from the north, Tibetan ones, of course, healers and physicians, Chinese ones, and Indian and Nepali and Bengali. And Indian means, you know, Bengali, Kashmiri, Nepali, Bihari. You know, India was different nations, you know. And they all gathered there and they collected things within the framework of the Buddhist medical thing, which has to do with the medicine Buddha. And so they collected this knowledge. For example, the urinalysis is not, they don't have it in Chinese medicine, they don't have it in Ayurvedic medicine, looking at some unclean thing, the Brahmins wouldn't want to do that. But the Galenic tradition had it. And it's a wonderful, amazing, it said the urine is the magic mirror within which the skilled physician can see the workings of the body of the patient perfectly. But it isn't any urine. It's the second half of the first pee-pee in the morning. If you didn't have sex, get drunk, or drink too much tea or coffee on the night before. This will give you the really accurate reflection. And I can't tell you how amusing it is. I used to take the Dalai Lama's physician on grand rounds in different American hospitals. And when the resident and the young doctors would see the Tibetan doctor stirring the urine, the patient in a white cup, you know, sniffing it, touching it to his tongue to make sure they didn't have diabetic or hypoglycemic issues, tasting it, and looking at it and then saying, too bad I can't keep it for a day or 2, because then they watch how the albumin lies, what height it takes in the dish, what colors change, etc. It's like it really elaborate. It's amazing, actually. Truly amazing. What it reflects, you know. Reflects what the liver and the kidney and all this kind of thing is doing. It's amazing. And that comes from the Galenic tradition, actually. And many Chinese physicians and Ayurvedic physicians during my days of traveling with those doctors and translating for them, they would show up and ask for an appointment, and then they would ask about it because they wanted to add that, you know. And then also the pulse. The Chinese have, but the Ayurveda doesn't really have that. And because not wanting to touch people by the Brahmins. But the Indian Buddhist monks certainly did. And then you take your you know, you have 12 different meters in the corners of your 6 fingers, of these 6 fingers. They're 12 meters, you know, this and this, like this. And then you put it on the radial artery, like this here, at different depths, sort of more superficial, the first finger, then a little deeper the second, and a little deeper the third one, but without smothering the pulse for the first one. And then you're getting 6 things registering. You train yourself to reach psychically, mentally, into the body of the patient. And for example, with this finger, you get the heart and the upper intestine. On the upper corner is the heart, on the lower corner is the upper intestine. In the second finger, you get the liver and the gallbladder. In the third, you get the, I forgot now, I think the bladder and the sexual equipment, I think, something like that, and a male. In the female, the heart is on the right wrist pulse, and the male, the heart is on the left wrist pulse. So, and then on the female, on the male, you have the lung and the lower intestine, and then the kidneys and so forth. The spleen and the kidneys, the one kidney, the right kidney. Here you have, that's right, this one is the liver and the left kidney. No, it isn't. No, this one is kidney. I forgot exactly. But anyway, you train to do that. And I had experiences like with those doctors that I couldn't believe, translating for them. Back in the 60s when it was really unknown and people would just come there. And one lady, for example, came to the doctor and she was having stomach problems and she was like this and that. So he's like taking her pulse. He'd never seen her from Adam, didn't know who she was. And he's taking the pulse and he says, "Oh, you've been living in a very dry, deserty place for a couple of years, right?" Yes, she'd been in Rajasthan. And then all these things, they're telling her all this stuff. And then they have this thing, they say, "Raise the banner of victory on the mountain peak." And that's when you get you sort of click, you figure out what's going on in the body of the patient. And then this particular doctor, he would get all gleeful and excited when he would, then he would be frustrated. He would ask like, "Well, you did this, or that," and they would be not giving the answer he expected, and then he would go back and try again. One time in one hospital was amazing, in the Worcester Hospital actually, John Kabat-Zinn's hospital, one lady who had this sort of mysterious thing, the resident said, and they said, "We'd like to see what you think, because we can't really be sure, we don't know, blah, blah, blah." And so he takes their pulse, looks at the urine, and that was one of those where I had tasted it. And it wasn't the exact right time of urine, but it was something okay. And he said to her, he said, "Oh, okay." He said about, after doing both pulses for a long time, he said, a couple of years ago, you had a thing where in the morning and in the evening, you would have like dizzy spells, and you would have to stop what you were doing and sort of take a break. And then it would pass. And then a few months ago, they stopped, or 6 months ago or so, that stopped. Maybe a year ago, that stopped. But now you're having whatever this phenomenon is, which they were saying was some kind of heart issue or something. She said, no, I never had that. 2 years ago? No way, no. She's like that. And then he didn't like that. He was like, And then he was asking him some other questions. He was talking to the doctors, and then talking, and he was going back to looking at this and that. And then sort of a little bit down, going the foot of the bed, the conversation was going on, and suddenly she jumped up. She sat up. She had been like this. She said, "Wait a minute, he's right, I had forgotten. Coming back from work or driving to work, sometimes I'd have to pull over. I would get so dizzy for no reason. But then it did stop, so I forgot." And then she's totally realized he had this rapport, and she became like this. And, focused on this funny-looking guy with his shaved head and his robes, and he had a little bird-like face. Ishi Danden, his name. And then the resident got jealous. So he's then giving her advice about this then diet and blah, blah, blah. And then the resident got mad. I think he felt somehow outstaged or something in front of the younger, intern or whatever, young doctors who were on his beat there. There was maybe 6 or 8 of them. And he suddenly said, okay, that's enough of this nonsense. We know what it is. She has a congenital heart defect. She's scheduled for the OR day after tomorrow. I just wanted to see what you were saying. And he broke this rapport that they had, and then she collapsed back into bed like that. And the doctor was so mad. And then he says to me, he didn't speak English. He says to me, he says, ask him like what congenital means. And guy said, oh, and then I didn't even, I said, I translated the question, and then I said, it means birth defect, right? He said, yes, right, birth defect. Oh, said the doctor. And this lady is 62 years old, and this just happened 3 or 4 years ago. That's the kind of congenital defect I'd like to have. He said. So in other words, he knew that guy was faking. He was just acting authoritative, you know. He wanted to reassert himself. And then he started arguing with him, and then the patient was there, and I said, oh, Dana, we can't do that. Because I had just seen a film about one of those Filipino surgeons in Chicago who did a demonstration of removing tumors from someone's colon or something. And then they had him arrested. They asked for a demonstration. It was in a surgical theater. I saw a film. And they were looking down these different doctors. And then he did it, and they couldn't find any chicken livers or any weird, scam. And he was pulling stuff out of their body, and it went like this, and there was no wound. And they couldn't see, they had checked him, frisked him. And they were so angry that he did it, they had him arrested for practicing without a license, although they asked him to do it. So I just seen that. So I said, oh, no, get out, don't argue. This is their territory, they can do it. So then we went out. He was so fed up. And then when the other resident came out, the head resident, he said to him, he says, you do operating on that woman, and she's likely going to have a stroke. You're going to really harm her, and it's really ridiculous to insist on this. What she has is a kind of phlegmatic condition where the fluids in her system are too viscous, and she needs a certain dietary and herbal thing to loosen the flow. And because she produced what these dizzy things are, that little bubbles, like with strong surface tension. I was trying to translate all this in his own Tibetan language, like form and press on certain parts in her brain. And those will subside when she calms down and when the fluidity gets more fluid. And her system is warmed, She was a smoker and stuff like that. And she's eating probably too much ice cream and too much cool things, And so he said, and therefore, if you give her the shock of surgery and heart surgery, he said, what you're seeing in the heart that you think is a defect may be a bubble there. There may be some kind of bubble pressing some membranes apart. But it will flow out itself if you do what I'm telling you. And if you do surgery, it'll harm you. She'll harm her because the bubbles will form like that, and she'll probably have a stroke, he said. And so I know it is not your business, you're a patient, but I just have to warn you. And then I asked the guy who invited us, who wasn't that resident, another person to that, and he would never tell me what the outcome of that patient was. So I assume she did have it. They did an operation, they had a stroke. I assume. But because he would never tell me. He would say, no, she was all right, he released her. Oh, no, they did an operation, was successful. He wouldn't say. The one who had arranged the thing. And then the doctor wouldn't go ever again on ground rounds. That was the last time. He said, I'm not going back to those places. They are not hospitals. They are butcher shops, he said. He didn't like it. He was upset about it. That same resident made a joke where they look in this room where they have all these x-rays that they swap up on the board, and then he talks to the younger doctors. That in the hospital they have that, all the cases, they have like 3 or 4 x-rays, and it's like it's just kind of moves like that. And then he said, since the doctor is here today, I'm going to show you a miracle. And then he showed a lung of some lady, not that lady, another one. He showed a lung with some shadow in it. He said, you see this? We were going to take off this part of the lung because obviously it was corrupted. And then he showed another one, bang, comes up. And then the same lung, but all clear. And he said, look at that. So then he said, well, what was the miracle? And then he said, well, it healed by itself. And the miracle is we couldn't schedule an OR for 3 days. And the doctor was again furious. He was so upset. And they were kidding and joking, so dehumanized. Anyway, I'm sorry. I know that's a digression. But this is all connected to the idea that compassion is the clue of healing, and that's the medicine Buddha tradition, is the cultivation of compassion if you're going to be a doctor or a healer. That's absolutely so. Okay, so now coming back to the tree. I'm sorry I'm digressing in that story. Okay, back to the tree. Oops, where's the tree? Oh, it hopped back there. There. Now, this first branch, this first trunk, is the healthy trunk. And there are 15 leaves here, you see? And these 15 leaves are 5 kinds of energy, or what they call wind. But wind doesn't mean a breeze like that. Wind just means motion. So it's actually just energy. There's no mass involved. The mass is from earth element. In other words, the elements are sort of archetypes rather than substances. But they're physical. So there's 5 kinds of energy. There's what's called the life central energy. There's the metabolic energy. There's the upward rising energy. There's the evacuative energy. And there's the motor, the all-pervading motor energy of the nervous system and the muscles. Those are the 5 types. And there's 5 minor types that have to do with different senses. Hearing, sight, etc. Smell, taste, touch. And but this represents the 5 major, which are really key. This is qi, in acupuncture, what they talk about, qi, prana, and Ayurveda. This is key to the Asian medicines. And this is the key that will eventually heal the materialist medicine of our culture, of our present culture, and introduce it back to a more balanced and humane thing. Because this is the bridge between physical and mental, between body and mind, is the energy, the wind, movement. It can be electrical, it can be respiratory, it can be digestive, it can be circulatory, but it's the moving energy. Then there's 5 types of bile, which are like the acidic heat part of the system, and then 5 types of phlegm, which is earth and water. So it's substance and cohesiveness. And the bile is really fire, acidic, And there are 5 types. And therefore, people often translate these 15 different things, or sometimes the three humors as humors, but they're not really humors because the wind is not a humor. Greek medicine didn't have the wind. They did have pneuma in Greek, but it wasn't considered a medical thing because that's where our materialist thing comes from, in a way. The psyche was sort of separated. And but here, the wind is a physical sort of side of the mind, you could say. Because Buddhism is not dogmatic. Buddhist science is not dogmatic. It truly is Popperian, if you know the philosophy of science a little bit, meaning that all theories are hypothetical. They're accounting for what evidence and data you have up to then, in the best possible way, most elegant, but they are awaiting falsification by different data that then improve and be refined. And supposedly, therefore, there are no dogmatic laws of nature. That's the true empirical science is that in the West. And Buddhist science was that from the beginning. Because of Buddha's, you all know, I think you've all been in my classes, so I don't need to go. I think mostly, right? So you know how Buddhahood is defined. You know the definition of Buddhahood. Does everybody know that? No? Some of you? Oh. So, well, see, Buddha, when you become a Buddha, you will have a weird experience about your sense of identity because you will think you're everybody. And you actually will be. In other words, what's called your reality body. You identify yourself as everything. That's what a Buddha is. A being that has expanded that sense of identification. Like when you're in love with somebody, or you have a baby, or someone you're really close to, then you can kind of empathetically feel you're them, maybe in some special moments, right? Or even more largely, sort of subliminally, families will stick together, even buddies in platoons in the war, or teammates, taking the knee, fighting Donald Trump, whatever. And, they identify with someone else, so they feel they are more people. And our culture is a little bit harder, the way the language is, and the way we're sort of told we're individualistic, but actually we're a horrible bunch of conformists, actually, but never mind. We're told we're individualistic. And Whereas certain cultures, they have different language and grammar, and it's more easy. Like Japanese are famous about togetherness, you know. But I won't tell that story. Let's digress on that story. But the other cultures, especially cultures that have had long exposure to Buddhism, the we becomes much easier to reach from than the I, you know. But it doesn't mean that the I is not very, very strong. It's just that the I realizes itself by developing the ability to identify as the we, actually. It strengthens the I to be able to do that, actually, rather than death dissolves it or it becomes weird. So anyway, when you're a Buddha, this expansion that the human being is capable of expanding your sense of identity to incorporate other beings, the Buddha being does that infinitely to an inconceivable degree. So therefore they feel they are everyone. And then it's more complicated than that. They feel they're everyone in two ways. One way, some of you could probably recite all that I'm saying now, right? I know my friend there, my Turkish friend who's the great philosopher. She could just give the same talk. Yes, you've had teachers training. You have to teach. You can't just sit there and act like you can't. You have to teach people. You should especially go teach the president of Turkey, you know. But anyway, never mind. I'm just kidding. But the point is that do you identify with everybody in two ways? In one way, they identify with everybody as themselves also being completely in nirvana. Everyone totally all right. Totally everything is made of bliss. That's the experience of a Buddha. That's how it's through that bliss, which melts your narrowness of identity, melts you into expanding it. And that vast kind of what they call great bliss or universal bliss is where they then see everyone as perfect, totally fine. But since they feel they are everyone, they can't miss that most of the people, a lot of the people, they don't feel like they're in nirvana. They're like, I'm not blissful. I don't have enough bliss. I'm miserable. I have a headache. Oh, I'm getting old. Oh, my teeth ache. Oh, people don't like me. Oh, they didn't do this. Oh, I don't have enough money. Oh, they're going to take away my pension. Oh, whatever, you know. They are just sitting there filled with fear, dissatisfaction, irritation, and confusion. But luckily, the nature of Buddhahood, the good news of Buddhahood is that feeling that we have, you know, based on through the three poisons of misknowledge, you know, active ignorance, that is, misknowledge, greed, lust, desire, hate, anger, those three poisons, you know, ignorance or misknowledge, you know, lust and hate. Those three poisons, you know, make us like this. But so Buddha doesn't miss that. That's how we are gripped by these addictions, emotional and notional addictions. Afflictions, people say, but that's not a good translation, actually. They're addictions. Because they seem good, like when someone gets angry when they're feeling oppressed. They think they feel very powerful, so it feels better. But actually then they make a lot of damage, both internally and externally, so it's worse. But that's like an addiction, you know. It makes you feel better, but it's actually harming you. And same with greed, you know, same with delusion. Anyway, so Buddha perceives everybody as himself on those two ways. So, but luckily the bliss way is stronger than the confusion and the suffering way. That's the good news of the Buddha. So therefore, Buddha is sort of present in everyone as their deeper nature that they are not themselves aware of. But Buddha is, and therefore Buddha is surrounding everyone with maximum assistance to shift from this sense of separate self, isolated, separate, alienated self, to identifying with everyone, them heading in the direction of expanding their sense of identity and expanding their sense of life. And the whole Buddhist ethical system is based on that. For example, not kill. That's the reason you don't kill people, evolutionarily speaking, from a Buddhist point of view. Not only does it bother them to kill them, although when you kill them, that doesn't put an end to them. Then they'll get reborn and they'll be really mad at you next time they find you, by the way, in whatever form they catch up with you. But they won't know why, but they will. They dislike you. That's on sight. because you killed them previously. But the point is, you don't kill them because by killing them, you're pretending that you're intensifying your sense of alienation from them by taking their body away from them, stealing from them, taking their property away from them. And then the sexual misconduct one, at the time when beings, human beings at least, mammals and human beings among them, sort of do melt and identify with the beloved, and that in the sexual time, then use that as a way of abuse or domination or something bad, and to intensify alienation is really stupid, really bad. So those are, for example, those are called the three physical paths of skillful and unskillful evolutionary action, which is what karma should be translated as, right? So that's all directed toward the fact that the evolutionary goal is to become a Buddha, where you are total bliss. You're everybody's total bliss, not just your own self's total bliss, but including yourself. You're total bliss and total compassion, aware of those who do not feel bliss, and maximum optimal, not omnipotence, but omnicompetence in helping each one try to unravel the knot of their confusion that makes them feel that they are not bliss. Because everyone is bliss. Your two cells on your fingertip, they wouldn't even like each other if they weren't happy. And then in cancer, it's just when you get miserable with yourself. And then some weird thing happens, and then we don't like that cell, and then it doesn't like you. And so, it's going to grow a lot, though, and defy you. And I'm going to grow a big lump right in the middle of your liver. It's misery. It is. It's like misery become physical. And bliss melts it out, supposedly. That's a Buddhist medicine. So that's a Buddha. Point is, so medicine Buddha, therefore, since they have a theory like that, although I ran into something really great today in an earlier class, I'm so excited about how they said, well, an enlightened being has a certain kind of ignorance still. It's really shocking kind of thing. This thing don't know, not knowing. Well, what is that exactly that? And because of that, and words also mislead, and so this is it's a case in a certain text where Vajrapani is speaking to other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and then about something he remains silent. And then they're all saying, like, why is he silent? He's a Buddha, he can say anything. He always knows everything, he can say everything. No, he didn't feel like it, he was silent. Because he was perceiving them all in the bliss level, you see. And anything he would say, they would take that from the point of view of their separated self, you see. So he didn't want to say anything in that particular way he was in that particular mood. So then they go on to elaborate that, and they say, in this text, they say that, well, because an enlightened being is always in the clear light of the void, which means they're in this universal bliss energy, infinite energy of the clear light of the void. Always. They never leave that. That's nirvana, also the same as nirvana. That's dharmakaya. Even death has become the dharmakaya. There's no death. Okay? Never leave it. But they also don't leave the other beings. So they're still there with all the beings who think they're in the samsara. So the ignorance is that Buddha cannot differentiate between the clear light of bliss and all the suffering beings. Because it's all one thing, which is what enables them to help the suffering being. In other words, they help the being who they know is suffering from the inside of the being, but they do so without getting trapped in the way the being sees itself as suffering. They see the being as really filled with bliss, so they are optimally capable of finding doorways for the being to discover that in themselves. Do you follow that? It's a little complicated what I said, but can you follow it? It's because the text I was reading was very complicated. And then they say, however, they demonstrate the difference. They can't explain it. And they sort of don't know it in the way of where you would explain it. But they demonstrate it. And then it says, well, how do they demonstrate it? It says, well, they demonstrate it by plunging into the clear light and popping out of the clear light constantly. So they're, I guess they show that, they demonstrate that. So this demonstrates to the beings who think there is no clear light of bliss And it's all this miserable, frightening world that I have to defend myself in, or try to get more of, or whatever, you know. And they show that you can leave it, but then they come back. So they show that you can leave it and they come back. So they demonstrate, but they can't explain it. I'm sorry, but I just loved it. I was just flipped out, totally flipped out. So what that means is that a Buddha doesn't know that they're a Buddha. They don't go around thinking, I'm a Buddha. Because how could they? Because they think they're the non-Buddhas too. So they're not going to go around saying, I'm a Buddha. But if someone asks them, who needs a Buddha, by using inference, they'll figure out, oh, this manifestation here, this is what they call a Buddha. Oh, okay, I'll be a Buddha for this person. So Buddha has to figure out that he's a Buddha. Or she, or it. Because Buddha can be an inanimate object too, because you're also all the inanimate objects, all the plants, all the earth, all the water, all the building, the concrete, the bombs. It's all you. It's all bliss. You look really serious thinking about that. I know you're thinking very hard about it. So anyway, so in other words, the medicine tradition, the medicine Buddha, grows out of a vision of human life, of life, not just human animal life, animate life, and the potential of evolution toward enlightenment. That is this kind of inconceivable evolution. And it differs from mystics of almost all the religious tradition, at least how they are sort of understood by people. And particularly when they have a theory that sort of nirvana is, and even different types of Buddhists, actually, so-called Buddhists, who think that nirvana is somewhere else. So they think the highest thing is to leave, which of course is an expression of the ultimate alienation and isolation. This all sucks, and nobody's in bliss, everybody's in a horrible state, and we're going to go to some bliss state somewhere else. And then Buddha frustrates those people because he says to them, well, yeah, okay, you can escape from your suffering. But then they say, well, what will it be like when I've escaped? And he said, well, can't really say. We just call it nirvana. You'll be blown away. Well, but what will that be like? Will my self still be there? Oh, well, we can't really say. Can't say there's no self there. Can't say there's self there. Oh. So he frustrates them by not being able to explain that, precisely because, obviously, if there was a state that was freedom and bliss apart from life, it would be a relative state. It would not be the absolute state, and therefore ultimately reliable. It would not be ultimate reality. Ultimate reality means the actual reality, uncreated, primordial, always here. We're here right now. Or there's no such ultimate thing. It's just all this mess. So that's just logical, and simple inference. They can figure that out. After a while, when they get frustrated, he won't say. He even said to those same people among the Buddhists who think that the highest thing is nirvikalpa samadhi, or just being off in space as an infinite God, or disappearing and not having to wash any dishes ever again, and whatever it is, that not be bothered by anybody because nobody's there, You're not even there, but nobody else is, and it's just bliss is there. It's like someone in the 60s said, like, the universe is a giant jar of Vaseline. It shows what he thought was fun. Anyway, so that person. So my point is that this is nirvana, if there is such a thing. It's right now, here and now. That's the main thing, and the medicine is involved in that. And Buddha's idea really is that. The dualistic form of Buddhism cannot manage the debate. Cannot. And that's a shock to people. I'm afraid I know a couple of Buddhists who are completely crazed, and they're caught what is called in Zen in the demon ghost cave. And that means the demon ghost cave is where you are a spiritual practitioner and you have some remarkable experience, because there's lots of them to be had, but then you interpret that experience as that I'm enlightened because I had that experience. Well, I'm sort of back here and brought down and I have to hang out. But then when I die, I'll go back there because there's a there that's elsewhere. And then they start acting superior to other people and they become megalomaniacs. And they become bad gurus. We've noticed quite a few. And not just in Buddhism, in every tradition. And that comes from either feeling you are enlightened or you have someone, you're channeling someone who's enlightened. That's called the demon ghost cave. Zen is, Chan and Zen are really great traditions. They really are. Although easily misunderstood also. So, okay, back to medicine. Back to the tree. Come on, tree. So health in Buddhist medicine, here's health over here. This right here, this is health. This flower. Well, these are worldly health. The ultimate health is here, this second flower. And it's Buddhahood itself. So true health is only Buddhahood. And you know the so-called three humors that you will read about if you read about Tibetan medicine, which shouldn't be called humors, that's from the Greek, where you had black bile, yellow bile, blood, and phlegm, were the four humors, I think. But that means, because humor means fluid. But chi, wind, energy, prana is not fluid. It's pure energy, motion. It's electricity. It's like magnetism. It's all kind of invisible energy, massless energy. You know that energy has no mass. You know that. That's the difference between energy and matter. It has no mass. So, but that doesn't mean it's not powerful. Just like mind has no mass, but it's powerful, actually. But even the physical and materialist scientists have something that no mass but has power, which is, they pretend to be very difficult to conceive when somebody's insisting that they consider the mind to be part of nature. But actually energy they consider part of nature, and it also has no mass, so it's not material. Anyway, never mind. So these 5 petals, and they are like long life. These lower ones are worldly. They're wealth, happiness, long life, bliss, etc., etc. But above them are enlightenment. Because enlightenment, and then this shows you the power and the importance of Buddhist medicine in India. The 3 poisons in the spiritual teaching, right? Delusion, ignorance, misknowledge, whatever you want to call it, avidya. You know, not knowing, it's not just not knowing, it's knowing something that's wrong as if it was right. So that's why I say misknowledge or misperception or misunderstanding is better than ignorance. Because, although that's a form of it, but ignorant. And then lust or greed and hatred or anger. And those 3 physically are the 3 ills. They're actually called the 3 ills. The word ne, or dosha in Sanskrit, means a flaw. You know, which the tridosha they call it in Sanskrit. And they go the 3 humors because they want Westerners not to be frightened. But actually, they mean the 3 flaws, the 3 ills. The word ne means sickness itself. So the 3 sicknesses. So by themselves, they're sicknesses. In balance, they can lead toward Buddhahood and health. And actually, the bile becomes intelligence and ultimate reality, perfection, wisdom. The phlegm becomes mirror wisdom and equality wisdom, earth and water. And the delusion becomes mirror wisdom. Ignorance, misknowledge becomes the mirror wisdom. And then there's equality wisdom and individuating wisdom, etc. And I think that's the bile. Bile becomes that. Okay. Thank you. Nice to see you. You need to go. It's okay. Is it a time? No, still we're not time. Oh my God, it's almost 9 o'clock. How time is like weird. It goes so quickly. How did that happen? We're just getting started here. So that's the enlightenment up there, you see. And these are the 7 physical constituents. You know, from the serum after eating, the digestive serum, blood and bile, and then muscle and fat, and then the excretions. You know, these are the 7, what are called the 7 bodily constituents. And these are the 3 types of diagnosis, etc. So this one trunk is all the positive things. You know, the nature of life is all there. And then over here begins to have the different disorders. You know, and there's many more branches and things. And you sort of memorize that, and that's a really good thing. One time I was talking with, I was translating for that same doctor in a conference, and actually Fritjof Capra made a derogatory remark about the 3-element theory, or Chinese has yin-yang, 2-element, and Ayurveda and Tibetan medicine have the 3-element, but which fits with the with the Buddhist 3 addictions, you know, of delusion, hatred, and ignorance. Physically, they are these 3 substances in the body. So that shows the root of it, you know, where the root of the Buddhist medicine is. And so he said, you only have these like three things, and like, we have a table of, 129 table of elements, and like plutonium, we discover new ones all the time, of all different kinds of things, plutonium, uranium, oxygen, hydrogen, etc. We have lots of things. You guys only have this. So then the doctor said, he used to be belligerent when people would challenge him. He was a debater, all Tibetans are. So he would say, well, we can do that. We have 5 elements, but we can do, each element has 5 different varieties by combining the way it combines with the other elements, like earth, water earth, fire earth, wind earth, space earth. So there's 5 earths. So we can multiply each 5 by 5, that's 25. Then we can further multiply the 25 by another 5, we have 125. Then we can get to 625. You guys don't have 129, like, forget it. We have 600. He said, we can do that. But, he said, the problem with you guys, he then says, and he didn't know Capra wasn't a medical doctor. There were some medical doctors there. He said, the problem with you guys, he said, is you've Humpty Dumpty'd the human being. So I thought he was speaking Tibetan. I mean, I was translating Tibetan, so I'm saying Humpty Dumpty. That's the one word I didn't learn yet. Humpty Dumpty, Humpty Dumpty, what verb is that, No, he says Humpty Dumpty. I say, yes, Humpty Dumpty, I'm going like this. And then he says, no, I mean Humpty Dumpty. He's saying this in Tibetan. Then finally I figured out he was using the English word Humpty Dumpty. And what he meant was that they have this big analysis down to cells and this whole kind of thing, cell types and different things, tissues. But meanwhile, they don't know whether to tell a person to eat spinach or broccoli. They don't know whether they should eat hot tea or cold sodas. They don't know. It's all completely off in the stratosphere, their analysis. It's not like Dalai Lama wrongly, somebody told him, I've been trying to get him not to stop it, but he hasn't yet. He wrongly talks about Tibetan medicine as holistic. And I'm trying to say, no, don't say that. Then people think that all the Tibetans are hippies. It is very analytic. Their botany is huge. All those Asian plants and the unique things at high altitude, the extraordinary botany and chemistry they have. Also different kinds of stone and mineral, also different animal parts. Because it was everything, It's very elaborate. So it's very analytic, but it keeps the analytic within principles. Like when you first go to medical school, you memorize some stuff, and then you have these trees, and so everything you fit back onto the tree. So that's a framework of these 3 trees, you see, that under the shade of which you conduct your practice. And then that lets you keep a holistic view of all this amazing analysis. But you can fit the analysis in, and they're not against it. Those great Tibetan doctors, they all decided about different modern chemical medicines and things like that, but they don't approve entirely of making everything out of petroleum, with that level, because they feel that, these kind of active ingredient isolation processes, they then put some molecules that are used to being embedded in certain forms that have elaborated themselves on the planet for thousands of years. And so when they're stripped out and put in an intensified form, sometimes it can be helpful, but sometimes it then sucks out of your system all kinds of other things, and that's the side effect thing. So it wants to go back to its habitual, like family of things, and it will draw stuff out of your system, and then it'll create side effects. So therefore they make herbal pills that have 35 different ingredients, all balancing different side effect things, that are very excellent. And if that sort of principle could be integrated into chemical and other things, it would be really great. And that's what will happen actually in modern, and when modern medicine realizes the ignorance level about modernity and materialism and the dogma of materialism, and goes back and connects to these more subtle things, And that will happen, I'm sure, it will. They're not going to blow us up, Even they try, they won't succeed. In fact, we're all going to be active now. They're wrecking the entire country and government. But that's clearly what they're intending to do. That's the libertarian purpose. If you look there, you read any article about any agency in the government, and it's a person who hates it is in charge of it, who plans to destroy it. That's absolutely their policy. Should be very clear about it. So if we like anything about our country, like a little bit of a tax deduction or some graduate student having tuition waiver, we're going to have to be active. And then they can't overwhelm the active population. Even they cheat hundreds of thousands, disqualify hundreds of thousands of voters. There's millions of us. If we all vote, if we don't vote, they'll keep wrecking everything. So then that's the next thing, the trees. So time is almost up. So that's sort of a little bit about medicine Buddha. But again, I'm glad I did a little bit about Buddhism. This is another tree. This is about different kinds of pills and procedures. This is the second tree. I think, I don't know if there's the third tree. And these are different outcomes and things. And all the 18 different things are in here. And it's really cute. I think, do I have more of these medical? The first medical atlas in history, actually, according to some scholars that I haven't really double-checked their research, but I believe them, the oldest medical atlas in history was made in Tibet in the 1670s and 80s. Like for barefoot doctors, where it shows little pictures of people taking the pulse and doing things. And also, maybe I'll tell you one last anecdote about the pulse reading. Like, I consider myself very left brain and, brainwashed by good schools in America, meaning bad schools overall, and male-dominated, chauvinist, weird, mathematically oriented, linear thinking schools. And so I have definitely, I'm not psychic. I had a complete concept like that. So how am I going to learn this pulse? First I had to memorize what's called the Pulse Sutra, which is part of the medical text that you have to memorize, which is a lot of similes, metaphors and similes, about different things that the pulse feels like when it's under your, like a thread someone flicking a thread where a knot is rolling through a rope, or like a cuckoo in the spring is intoxicated because the female cuckoos are calling and he's like staggering and his song is strange. I mean, all kind of funny metaphors, similes. So I memorized that, right? And then the doctor made me sit in front of him in the clinic and take everybody's pulse. As talking to them in different languages. Some languages I didn't understand, Hindi I didn't, Tibetan I did, and English I did. And so because they think talking to the patient is very important. That's one of the major they say tongue is a major diagnostic tool by talking and asking the patient what's the matter with you and what happened yesterday, and discovering about their circumstances of their existence. They don't pretend there's some magic bullet that you can just not talk to them and then reduce them to a lump, a pile of chemicals that you're going to then analyze with some machines. That's ridiculous. You have to talk to them and see what's wrong with them. Anyway, but the pulse is very important. And so then I would do pulse after pulse. And also you get clues because you look at the face, there's all kind of prognostication like that. And sure enough, after a while, some metaphor would pop in mind. One of the similes about this heart pulse or the kidney pulse or something. And it would be there would be a bloop bloop thing that would feel like one of the metaphors. And then I would start to get more accurate. And he would correct me and would have a riot when I got way off. And he'd laugh and poke fun and they love to tease. But I actually became the equivalent of psychic by the memorization and then the practice. In the sense that the verses would pop up, and then that verse linked to a certain diagnosis of a certain organ or a vessel, the 5 solid organs and the 6 vessels in the body. And, I was acting like a psychic when I was getting good enough at it after a year and a half of it, that I was really getting pretty good. I could tell from the pulse. And I kind of lost track of it now. That was 50 years ago. But it is what an amazing educational thing, in a sense, of being able to train someone to do that through memorizing a text and then hands-on, And then it isn't that there's not some mysterious thing that like there's a vein that comes straight from the heart to this corner of this finger. You could also do that on a fingertip or on an earlobe with a baby who might be able to flail their arms, or on the foot even. You can do it on another part of the body. But they consider the heart is making the big noise of the different organs. So if you're too near the heart, then it'll drown out the pulsation of blood going in and out of the liver, in and out of the kidneys, in and out of the lungs, because they also expand and contract. Blood flows in and goes out, and how they expand and the quality of their expansion, and whether they're clogged or not clogged, and all kind of thing you can detect. This one guy detected parasites that they couldn't detect with stool tests and everything, although they knew I had it. Called strongyloides at Mass General Hospital. They never could exactly detect it. And of course they gave me that horrible vacuum cleaner fluid or whatever it is, vacuum, but that didn't get rid of it. He got rid of it, and he gave me medicine, got rid of it in 3 weeks. And he detected it. And I had forgotten that I had it. I wasn't complaining of anything. It's a very weird, there's some very visible parasites that come and go, and you get little, like funny little dots on the wrist or around the waist in certain seasons. Strongyloides, it's called. Anybody who's medical knows about it. And I said, well, how did you know that? He said, well, because the way that your upper intestine was expanding and contracting, there was something gripping parts of it. It wasn't flowing right. It had obstruction in there, and I realized it was parasites. Wow, I was breathtaking. Really, it's breathtaking, and that can be trained. It isn't like everybody has to be a psychic. Of course, some people are better naturally than others. Okay, so any final question? We're coming to the time. Oh, you're bravely still there. Oh, there you are. Thank you. Any final question in the last minute or two? Yes? No? Yes?
Maybe a bit disengaged.
I'm sorry?
Maybe my question is a bit disengaged from the whole topic of medicine.
Can you speak a little more loudly?
Yes. I had a question about the mandala.
How?
I had a question about the mandala.
Oh, the mandala, okay, of the medicine Buddha, yes. Sorry.
Since the Buddha is looking towards the south, right?
Yes.
It came to my mind that in the cult of Shiva,
Yes.
there is an aspect of Shiva called Dakshinamurti.
Yes.
I don't know if it rings a bell. But, and Dakshinamurti is always looking towards the south in the temples.
Yes.
And but the main thing is that the direction of south, looking towards south, has to do with death, because the direction
It relates to what?
to death, because direction of the south.
Yes, yes, that's where Yama.
Yeah.
Yama is outside the mandala, always Yama, the god of death, yeah. He's out there.
Yeah.
But he's also a wisdom god. It's very important, Yama. Yes, that's the same for Buddhists. And he's confronting death, meaning that his teaching is an elixir beyond death. I think it's one of the reasons. Also, in a Chinese thing, the emperor faces south, and then everything happens automatically. So it's without any effort, wu wei, without any activity, then everything will happen. When you have the right motivation, then you face south. Life will flourish in abundance, something like that. So I think they're shared. But Shiva is just a pal of everybody. Here and there, some people who thought they were Shaivite and who thought they were Buddhists had some kind of Jains also. They had terrible in South India problems with the Shaivite king. But those are people using religion and sort of ideas. But Shiva himself is a big buddy. It's an important word, peace. It means peace. Shiva, auspiciousness, peace,
I have a question.
bliss. Yes.
What is their concept of a terminal disease? Because
A terminal disease?
Yeah, because there's not such a thing.
Life is a terminal disease.
Right, that's for sure.
It ends in life, but it's not really terminal.
In their mind, there is no death, right? That we reincarnate.
Yeah, really, there's no death.
So what is quote a terminal?
What?
How do they approach a patient that comes with
Yes.
disease?
Well, the most important thing I think in approaching a patient who is dying is whatever you're saying or doing, which will depend upon the circumstance and the ideologies and everything about the patient and the family of the patient and the whole thing and how much pain they're in, et cetera, all that will all depend on the circumstance. But I think the most important thing is that you, the medicine Buddha healer, if you are, then you are sort of seeing the deathlessness in that patient, that the continuum of their life force will go on. And rather than worrying about losing it forever, they're just leaving a body that may not be functioning well anymore. And they're actually heading for the most efficient method of rejuvenation and the cheapest one that there is for them. It's not going to be cheap for their parents, but it's going to be cheap for them. And so if you, even without saying that, in case they like a big materialist and they want to be nothing after death, they don't want to have a future life, or if they want to go to heaven, or whatever it is, you don't have to interfere with any of that. The fact that you feel that will communicate itself to them, because there'll be a feeling of calm, of like it'll be all right, whatever it is, will emanate, because you will not get caught up in that sort of thing, Like the first thing, if you go to work in the morning or you go see somebody, and the first thing they do is they go, then you, what's wrong with me, If they smile and look happy with you, then you'll feel a little bit relaxed too. So that's really the keyest thing. So it's the doctor's own mind that realizes the power of life, which is what Buddha, it's what Buddha discovered. That's why he was smiling. That's why it has been such a huge tradition, in spite of the fact that it's anti-militarism, it's anti-selfishness, it's all the things that we are wrongly taught in our education are indispensable to every human society. You have to be nasty, you have to be out for yourself, you have to be violent, they were all taught that. That's wrong. And Buddha's news was that it was wrong, and the fact that it's been such a huge tradition on the planet shows that the human beings as a whole know that. So, we can, that's what I take comfort. I'm still taking comfort. I did so through the Bush administration, the Reagan, the Nixon, but I got better and better at it, and now I'm putting the ultimate challenge. And that is that the absolute stupidity and incompetence of the so-called rulers proves that we're almost free of them. And we are going to rise up and make things bright. And we had a mom, as C.K. Lewis C.K., before he was disgraced by his ridiculous... what is it with these guys masturbating in front of strangers? What is that? What's wrong with them? It's so embarrassing even to think about. What is that with those guys? He's a funny guy, but what is that? Is that the ultimate comedy routine, I think? Like, he's going like this in front of some person he doesn't know? And it's really pathetic, You think they should be upset about him rather than offended. What kind of person? What's his problem? Send him, give him some kind of a milking machine or something, like, from a farm, a dairy farm or something. Poor guy. Anyway, he made a funny thing about how we were supposed to have a mom, Hillary, and everybody's we don't like Hillary. She did a bad job. She didn't run. She won. They cheated her. Wisconsin, they disqualified hundreds of thousands of people, poor people, black people. And then here they won by 18,000 or whatever votes after disqualifying all those people. Republican governor, Republican state, Republican Supreme Court justice wrecking the Voting Rights Act. They disqualified. She won that election, hands down, not just the people in California, everybody. We're not all that stupid, but the point is the incredible stupidity of those people should give us hope. They just can't manage us all, Even they have a propaganda machine like Fox News, they still can't manage us all. And we still won that election, and we'll win another one, and they'll cheat. But we have to, the problem was we needed a bigger margin. Bernie should have got off his ass and stopped grumping because she didn't do exactly what he wanted. And made his people get busy. Then they would have a margin, they would have had hundreds of thousands more, whether they disqualify hundreds of thousands. If all those young people had gone out like they did for Obama. They cheated Obama. They've been cheating massively since Gore. They cheated Gore. Totally cheating. In any state where they own the Secretary of State, like that Catherine, whatever her name was in Florida. Remember her? Remember that lady? In the Gore-Bush election, Catherine, she became put into Congress right away, so given her a big reward. Cheating. So everybody better vote. Good night. That's how to heal medicine Buddha. Okay? Take care. What, you have a question? Oh, I'm trying to leave. It's okay. What is that?
So, I want to ask about the value of Tibetan medicine in
Yes.
chronic conditions versus emergency situations.
Fantastic. When I was first in Dharamsala in the 60s, there was a English doctor in the Western clinic that some foundation had put up there for the refugees for some condition that they work better with. He always recommended people with jaundice, with arthritis, certain diseases. He would send them to the Tibetan clinic, his patients. He says, we don't have good medicine for this. We don't have good medicine for that. And then they would send people to him, that's the thing in India. In India, there's 4 legal, actually now 5 legal medical traditions. And they kind of interact, but they're not, some of them are more like, territorial about their thing, but they kind of interact, and they know different things are good for different things. And Tibetan medicine was officially legalized in the last Congress before the BJP came in. BJP doesn't mind. And actually the Ayurveda industry does mind, because Tibetan herbal things are preferred by people who know about it, because they consider them more organic, they're less industrialized. Ayurveda has become highly machine-oriented, industrialized in India. But they're still very good, a lot of Ayurvedic things. But they're very competitive, in other words. They have 55 clinics around India and Nepal, and they're very successful. And the Dalai Lama makes them keep their price very, very low, and also give it free to really poor people, which they complain about. The managers of the TED medical thing. Oh, he forces us, we could get more money. They can't, he won't let them. But they're still very prosperous. They still thrive because they are helpful. I eat their medicine all the time. When I run out of it, I begin to get a little whatever. Yes?
Just one thing, can you make those images available to us when we get uploaded?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Can we make these images available to us when we get uploaded?
The images?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, well, there's a book, Tibetan Medical Paintings. There's a book, which has all 77 of them. It's a kind of a little bit rare book. There's even a little bunch of cards they make that are more easy to find. I forget who prints those. But you look up Tibetan Medical Paintings, you can find them. And these images, how do you want me to make them available? I'm not sure. I just have them from the book, So I can't really, I'm not allowed to distribute them, I guess, But, if someone had a particular one. But there are books on Tibetan medicine that show the trees and outline and discuss it, Okay? Okay, good night, everybody. Have a great holiday. I don't see you all. And see you maybe next year, and I'll do Vimalakirti. Oh, she left. I'll try to do Vimalakirti, and I'll think of the other thing I'll do. Okay.
This video was brought to you in part through the generous support of the Tibet House US membership community and listeners like you. To learn about the benefits of Tibet House membership, including special invites to Dorset tours with Robert Thurman and friends with geographic expeditions, trips in 2018 include Bhutan. To learn more, visit bobthurman.com. Tashi Dalek, and thanks for watching.